to the Life and Work panel, number 2123. Did that to make sure that I was in the right place. My name is Dennis Nishi, and I'll be the moderator. And I'm a contributing writer and career columnist for the Wall Street Journal. And I agreed to take this panel because I think this is a pretty timely topic, especially as we're pulling ourselves out of the recession and forced to kind of reorient ourselves, our careers and our lives. And so I think that, you know, our panelists will offer some interesting insight. As for actually Sarah Edwards and Paul Edwards, unfortunately they haven't seemed to check in yet. They haven't checked in yet, so it'll just be John and Ann.
The Edwards' insights will be the most zen, however, I can promise you.
So yeah, allow us to go into a little bit more detail and maybe a little bit longer Q&A if you have some questions. But so I'm going to introduce the panels, and I'm going to actually ask a question first, and maybe have them answer it each after I introduce them. So I guess my first question is how you would describe your own view of life and work and how it applies to you personally and your families. So to my immediate right is John McKee, and he was actually one of the founding executive members of DirecTV before he became an author, and he's also a consultant. And he's worked for many corporate clients, including Disney, Comcast, Warner Brothers, NBC, ESPN, Cablevision, Starz, just to name a few. And he's actually written 3 books, including 101 Ways Women in Management Shoot Themselves in the Foot, which I actually think is a pretty brilliant title. And his latest book is entitled The Plan, which is a guide to taking control of your life. So I guess I'll leave it to you to...
Okay. Hi, thank you for coming. The question was... what does life and work mean to you? I think it's very difficult to separate the two nowadays. We're often told that we should try to do that there should be a 9-to-5 period and there should be the rest of your life. And I believe they're very much tied together. I believe that if you have meaningful work, regardless of whether you're doing it at home or you're doing it for somebody else, the likelihood is you're going to be far more satisfied. That will make a big difference in your personal life, I believe.
Okay. To John's right is Ann Kreamer, and she's had a pretty eclectic career as part of, I think we have our lost panelists.
Well, finding life and work is more challenging when traffic is part of the work. There you are.
So sorry.
So I'm basically introducing each of you, and I asked the question, what does life and work mean to you in your personal life? So after I introduce you, just answer the question. You can answer the question. So, Ann Kreamer, basically, she worked on Sesame Street in the late 70s and was responsible for turning them into a national brand. And she also helped launch Spy magazine with Kurt Anderson, who is also her husband. She went on to become worldwide creative director of Nickelodeon and Nick at Night, but ended up switching careers to become a columnist for Fast Company, and also creating the monthly American Treasures column for Martha Stewart Living. Her latest book is It's Always Personal, which explores the new realities of emotion in the workplace. So.
Well, John stole a lot of the essence of what's in my book when he was talking about how there is no longer a distinction between our private lives and our professional lives. But I'll back it up a little bit to say that I've had the privilege of actually working with my husband starting a new organization, which was Spy Magazine. And at the time we were in our 30s, we didn't have children, although I got pregnant with both of our children while we were creating the magazine, and also invented their maternity leave policy. In the process of doing that, but it was a magnificent experience because we were able to actually, during a time where you had to give 1,000% to the creation of something, share that. Now, it could be the end of a marriage for many people. For us, it was an enrichment. Now both of us work at home together and eat 3 meals a day together. My husband's a writer and also has this radio program called Studio 360, which is an arts and culture program for public radio. Anyway, so we're together all the time, and it's fucking great. We share ideas. We're each other's sort of brainstorming sessions. We have everything going on together and around us, and it's been a complete enrichment and far better from when I used to work at Viacom and had to face corporate overlords.
Great. So our Lost Lambs, Paul and Sarah Edwards, they can only almost be introduced as a single unit since they've been working together as an award-winning team for about 20 years. And they're also both accomplished professionals on their own. Sarah's a licensed clinical social worker with a PhD in ecopsychology and part of Let's Live's local emphasis on developing a sustainable community. And Paul is a licensed attorney that consults for the Mountain Community Small Business Development Group. Now together they've authored 17 books, including their latest, which came out this month, Middle Class Lifeboat, which is about providing some career and lifestyle alternatives for people seeking meaningful work in today's challenging economy.
Well, I can just say that many of the things that you said relate. Paul and I met when we were in college. And we were, in college, you have classes and projects and so forth, but you see each other all the time because there's lots of free time and lots of flexibility. And then we graduated, and it was like, ooh. I had a wonderful job. I worked for the Office of Economic Opportunity, but it involved enormous amounts of travel. And I forget all the different things he was doing, but it also involved travel. So we would wave to each other in the airport, and those were the days of the day runner, and we'd go, okay, when will you be here when I'm going to be here? And then we had our son, and we were just hoping for days that we would see him in the daylight. And we realized, this isn't working. But we didn't really know alternatives because people didn't work from home then. We happened to, the president, but we happened to go to a meeting of one of our outside consultants, and his office was in his home. I walked in there and I went, this is it. This is going to give us the freedom. Well, I went back to school to get my clinical license so I could open my practice. Paul had his own little story here. But I did feel, like you were saying, I felt like queen for a day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my life back. I could decide my hours. I could decide who I work for. There was a flow restored to my life that we had missed terribly. And that balance, that life and work having some kind of integration again was just a blessing.
And that's what led to our very first book. When we came home, we said, people would ask us, well, how do you do that? And how do you get along together? Anne has already mentioned something about that. It works. It can work in any case. It's not for everyone, but it did work for us. And so we wrote our first book, Working from Home, which was the first commercially published book on how to do that. And actually, it's about to go into an interactive edition. But this issue of finding life in our work was something that we've been grappling with, virtually all of our lives. And we knew that when you're really immersed in something, that when you're absorbed in it, that you lose track of time, you lose track of where you are. It really doesn't matter. And this is an idea that other people have expressed, whether they call it flow or the zone or whatever. And so a lot of what we've been doing in terms of our careers is to find that balance. Both in our personal lives as well as in terms of what we write. And that's what's the genesis of both our writing careers as well as what we're about now.
Great. Now, actually, one thing I wanted to ask you about, since you've been together so long and you're kind of aligned in your work, I was wondering, does that actually make it easier to sort of integrate the two parts of your lives? When you're constantly able to sort of bounce things off each other?
Well, that's been an interesting experience, too, because when we first started working together, I had my practice and Paul had his public affairs consulting firm. It made it much easier because, we saw each other, which was really nice every morning and every evening. But then when we started writing together, gradually we merged our work, and for a good 20 years, good 15 years, we were like you all. We were with each other 24 hours a day, and we found that enormously easier. Our son doesn't know, of course, what it would have been like had we not, but he still felt we were working too much. Then now, as things have changed and the whole publishing industry has changed so dramatically, we've had to cross back again, and I have a part-time practice 3 days a week in my home, but nonetheless, there's big blocks of time when I don't see him, so he's working with the SBDC and working on the interactive edition of the book, so we're kind of back, it's sort of like back to the future. We're sort of back where we were, but either way, I think it makes it much easier. I really do.
One of the keys that we have found to make it work for us has been to compartmentalize as much as we could physically as well as time-wise our work from our life. Now, not everybody does that. Like, we did a study for one of our books, and we found out that people fell into two patterns that work at home. Some are integrators, and you'll find the laptop computer in the kitchen, and you'll find that the smartphone is with them all the time. Of course, this is before that mobile technology was available. But other people are segregators, and we fall into the segregator class. We keep everything separate to the extent that we can. The personal life is separate from the work life. And that's one way for us of achieving some degree of balance.
Oh, that's interesting. I always thought of it, especially for myself. I've been a freelancer for most of my adult working life, and I always thought of work life being so integrated that you could just jump into one or the other at any moment.
I think it can be. And I think it depends upon whether you find what we call perfect work.
Yeah.
The ancients didn't differentiate between work and in fact, work is a relatively newer concept that only came about in the last 10,000 years. And the idea of a job, I mean, even the word job didn't exist until the 17th century. That if you find something that is in your flow, your core, and it's part of what you do, you don't think of it as work.
Yeah.
I'm sure you must find that too, Anne, that you can bounce in and out. You know, if you're working from home, you can easily bounce in and out, pop over and put on a crock pot or put on a load of laundry or whatever in between something that you're doing. There's a flow there.
Well, for sure, but I actually think that, and it's what John was referring to earlier, that there's no one today who isn't not at their office having texts and emails come in from their children and their partners and having to kind of chronically do things, or at home who isn't having their colleagues call them all night long and having emails going out. So it is a fiction that there is a distinction between working and home life now. So whether you're actually in the same building at the same time, I think it's almost irrelevant in that regard, that everybody needs to kind of figure out a new paradigm for how to be authentically themselves in the full spectrum of the world and not have these sort of, 180-degree personas that they put on their suit of armor to go into office, and then they're like happy mom when they come home. Well, that's bleeding all over the place. So just become one sort of person.
To some extent, though, this is an issue of boundaries. We have a friend by the name of Gil Gordon who wrote a book called Turn It Off, and he literally does that. When he's about to go on a vacation, he sends out email and says, I'm not going to be available for so much time. Now, unfortunately, that's not as easy to do for everybody, because a lot of people are working in too many hours a day and too many days a week and can't afford the luxury of doing it off. And then in that case, I think we turn to someone like Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And the whole message that he derived was about finding significance, finding some spiritual value in what it is that you're doing. And that's something we can carry around with us all the time.
On a slightly different tack, it's kind of the meat of, I guess, of the problem. Is it, and maybe John can answer this, do you think that the reason why work and life, that people hold it in such a distance, a dichotomy, is that the companies perpetuate, this negative feeling, Well,
there's no doubt that corporations want to get every minute of your time, if that's what you're talking about. The more enlightened corporations, I find, now recognize that if they burn their people out, they're not going to be of any value to them. So they're becoming a little bit sophisticated when it comes to at least talking the talk about taking time off, going home and having a day that ends at 5 or 6, something like that. But I don't think that, I think the issue is it's more internal. I think how you approach your job. If you recognize that you have two parts of yourself, and if you put some personal boundaries there, and if you try to manage towards that and you help your supervisors recognize that you've got limitations, it's far easier to kind of manage your workday. Beyond that, though, I think the first thing one needs to do is identify what it is that makes them happy, what it is that makes them satisfied at work, and what it is that makes them satisfied outside of work. And most people just don't take the time to do that, I don't think.
And you actually also mentioned in your book that people tend to kind of focus on the negative aspects of their work and not really look at the positive aspects, and that just kind of brings them down and gives them the wrong impression about it.
That's a really interesting thought, and it seems to be particularly so with Americans that I work with. We seem to have this belief that we've got to be kind of first out every time. So one of the things we do with our clients is we ask them to do a SWOT analysis, which is something very common in business, not very common for personal. And that's just a matter of indicating your strengths, your weaknesses, and then taking a look at outside of your life, your opportunities and the threats that are preventing you from doing things. It's a fairly easy analysis to do. When you do it, your tendency is to focus on your weaknesses. These are all the reasons why I can't do what it is that I want to do, but listing your strengths and listing the opportunities really helps you get more clear about where you can go and how you can do it.
Okay, great. Another thing I kind of got from going through your books is that treating work and having a different kind of approach to work and your home life, for example, kind of restraining your emotions while at work, how is that detrimental to both your work and home life?
Restraining your emotions?
Yeah, at work, trying to put on a brave face, never, wanting to show any kind of weakness.
I can talk a little bit about that if you want. I did 2 gigantic national surveys with J. Walter Thompson in the context of my book. The genesis of the book was a friend at a cocktail party asked me why had all women she'd known cried at work and wished they hadn't. And I thought, as one of the women who cried at work and wished she hadn't, why was that? What was the stigma that was attached to that? So I decided to step back and try and kind of get rational about emotion. And I wanted an immediate snapshot of what emotion meant in the workplace today. And we interviewed over 2,000 people in every profession in every state, equally divided between the genders. And what people were feeling the greatest amount was, 73% of them felt that they were frustrated. 60% of all the employees had seen their boss get angry at somebody during the past year. 41% of women had cried, 9% of men had cried. But interestingly, people who reported that they had cried at work did not report that they were unhappy at work. It was something that simply happened. It was like this overflow moment. So the kind of sense of denial of emotion at work is like the warning light on your dashboard. If the check engine light goes off, you better get to the shop, or else your car is going to, leave you in the middle of the 101 on the, far left lane, which would be a complete disaster. If you actually realize that you're feeling your emotions well up in the context of a work environment, step back, think about them. Are you upset because you feel undervalued? Are you overworked? Are you, did you put your dog down this morning? I mean, do the kind of critical thinking skills to kind of help yourself create a construct into which to kind of go either to your boss and say, I need more resources, or, in some cases, I hate my job, I got to get out of here. Let me think clearly about this and kind of figure out what's going on. So, emotion is prevalent in everything. I don't think you, again, can make the distinction between home and work life. The guy stuck in traffic, knowing they were supposed to be on the panel, well, they're bringing a lot of that energy into the panel. They come in, they're kind of feeling apologetic, a little stressed out. You cannot separate these things from what's going on. It informs every decision in our lives, whether you're at work or you're at home.
I think that's so. And by the way, I agree with the SWOT analysis. That's a very good point. One thing that I'm not trying to commercialize working from home, because I think a lot of us do that whether we want to or not, and it's not for everyone. But there was just recently a study that was done that indicated that people who worked in an office where too many times people are expected to hang their feelings up on a coat rack when they come in, draw the line at 38 hours a week before they feel stressed. Whereas the people who are working at home predominantly it's 55 hours. And of course, that's good for corporations and that's good for people.
Now, how do you actually exercise these emotions, to maintain your emotional health without looking like a basket case at work?
I think that's an issue for, wherever you work, whatever you do in life, it's an issue that we would hopefully develop, like, during adolescence. but we don't always, we don't have oftentimes the skills to know how to think about our emotions, how to put, what you were describing, to analyze, well, how come I'm feeling the way I do, and what would be an appropriate way for me, because I think of emotions all as really valuable energy that's giving us a signal, first of all, that there's something that we're responding to that we need to address, and secondly, the exact precise amount of and type of energy to do something with. When we feel happiness, it's giving us a signal, hey, we like this, and it gives us the energy to express that with some sense of buoyancy. On the other hand, let's say it's anger, this brings us an enormous amount of power to us. And the question is, how do we, in our brain, translate that into, okay, I know, this means my boundaries are being pushed here, I need to do something, and how do we mediate that so that something is something that is effective, as opposed to something that, like you said, makes us look a basket case, whether that's tears. Again, tears, that brings that signal that there's something very sad that we need to be grieving over some type of loss or disappointment. And the energy that it brings us is a quieting sort of thing. And if we honor those things and utilize and figure out how to utilize the energy, as Anne was saying, then we're not going to look like a basket case. We can take care of ourselves.
Can I add some
Sure.
sense? I mean, it's also, I think I looked at the neuroscience of emotion, and I found that it was extremely helpful to me to find out things like women's tear ducts are anatomically different from men's tear ducts. So when women get teary-eyed, tears stream down their face. When men might be feeling the exact same degree of emotion, they're only sort of, getting misty-eyed. Learning that what goes on in terms of office dynamics, ancestors on the savannah were trained when they were faced with threat to, fight or flight. Those hormones still flood us, but it's not a physical threat, it's a cognitive threat. So I agree with Sarah, you need to be no one's taught when they enter the workforce. What do you do when a colleague cries? It's never a conversation that's had. There are really easy ways to address that because, you can do it, but we're all taught to this is kind of nerve-wracking, and can we just get out of this room as fast as we can? So it's get rational. I know it sounds oxymoronic, but get rational about the emotions in a way and develop protocols and learn how to deal with them.
Now, Anne was actually browbeaten by Viacom CEO Sumner, and you actually stifled that at the time.
Yeah, well, very interestingly, a lot of the research, a woman named Victoria Breskel, who teaches at Yale, has done a lot of research into anger and anger management. And women almost always, in fact, want to get angry first in a workplace, but because they feel politically incapable of doing it, because to this moment, men are still sort of their superiors, so it would be professional suicide. When Sumner Redstone called me to tell me that I hadn't made the Viacom stock price move with the announcement of a deal, I was shocked, and I wanted to, tell him just what I thought of him to his face, but that would have been not possible. So instead I cried. That's what women do. And then there's this kind of triple whammy, which is that because you cry when you really wanted to get angry and you're ashamed of having your tears, and then you're mad at yourself because you didn't tell that guy what you wanted to think. So it's just like this incredible cycle that's super damaging to women because we, don't think about it for what it is, the biological phenomena that they are.
Well, we're not supposed to get angry either, though.
No, we all know what we're called
then
when
we
we're
have
angry.
B words and so forth applied to ourselves. We're always supposed to be, I guess, sweet and lovely. I don't know.
Or maybe even to overperform, because it may be a boys' club.
There's no doubt about that. I think, having been in corporate life for so many years, there was always the expectation that if you were a woman, you were going to have to work harder. You were going to have to just give that little bit extra to show that you were keeping up with the boys, even if the boys were really not very good.
Man up.
Yeah.
Probably most
women are catching up now.
Probably most people agree that the self-employed and entrepreneurs have, I guess, a more of a sense of an integrated work life. just because they have the ownership. And I was wondering what somebody who, some employee someplace who doesn't have a stake in the company, what they can do, to integrate some of the, things that the self-employed person integrates into their life, to give them a little bit more harmony.
I think you can have a great life and work in corporate life. I think, many people have done that for a long period of time. It's kind of in vogue right now to say that, all corporations suck and nobody wants to be there. But, I had a great career. I've seen lots of people have great careers in corporate life. You want to make sure that you know where you want to go in the organization. First of all, you want to be in an organization that you want to go someplace. You want to know where you want to go, and then you want to understand how you can get there. If you can find a mentor, that's the best thing in the world. Somebody that has got some miles on them and they've seen the world from a different perspective, that you can share your thoughts and have them give you some wisdom and help you get clear. I think with a mentor and with clarity, you can start deciding what it is that you want to do in the organization. Once you're clear about what it is that you want to do, then it's a matter of you can model yourself after other people who have been very successful. Clearly, if I was a young woman following in this lady's footsteps, I would have done everything exactly the way she was doing it, because it worked real well. But I think you can...
I quit.
Well, I think you gave us a reason why you quit, too. Yeah. But it's a matter of knowing what it is that you want to do and then understanding how to do it. Make sure that you're constantly talking to your supervisor. Am I doing a good job? What are the expectations? What do I need to move ahead in this organization? And then have different perspective with different people. I love the idea of going out for dinner once in a while or going out for a drink once in a while with your peers and comparing notes about what's going around in the organization, what they're hearing. It really can help you get a kind of holistic view on the company and see things that perhaps in your cube or in your office right now you don't get to see.
Well, I would add to that also and say, go out as often as you can with people in a very different profession from the one that you're in. Meet as many people in as many different walks of life as you can, because I think that exposes you, particularly if you're young and you're looking into the workplace, to different kinds of things that might be appropriate for you or acceptable for you. So if you're only in your own wheelbox, you only get like the lawyer's point of view or meet artists, meet writers, meet doctors, get out of the house, get out of the office, I think.
I agree with that, and that's one of I think the losses of, for example, the general circulation newspaper, where you're exposed to a variety of different stimuli, and today you have to create that for yourself, and that's true whether you're self-employed, where you're following people on Twitter who are in your specialty or whatever. You really do have to create that for yourself, and I think that you're right. That's one of the big advantages of the workplace. And when I left the law firms and such, that's what I missed. So, but you can create it for yourself.
And one of the questions I often get emailed is from people who are really afraid of making any kind of a change, and that's probably maybe the biggest challenge is overcoming that inertia. So, I mean, what's the secret?
Well, I think it's a little more difficult now because of the economy, that at least the people that I know, and I do both psychological counseling and career counseling, and in my career counseling practice, people are really very nervous right now about change because, for example, one person I know made the decision that one would have in the past been encouraging to do, follow your heart, follow your bliss, go where your energy is. So that's what he did last fall, and with the assumption that he would find a job. Well, he just did get a part-time, not a part-time, but a temporary position. It's much more riskier, it truly is. And this other client asked me, well, is it past now when we can follow our bliss? And that reminded me of Viktor Frankl, who you were mentioning in the past, that our bliss is actually anywhere if we look for it. When I interviewed Viktor Frankl, he corrected me in that wonderful Austrian accent that he had. I said, well, when you create your meaning, because his whole thing was meaning, finding meaning wherever you were. He was at Auschwitz internee, if you don't remember him. And he said, you find meaning wherever you are. And I said, when you create your meaning. He said, no, not create, find. And I think that's what I was telling her. Given the situations that we're in at any particular time, we have to look for where our bliss is within those realities. And for some people right now, they really can't go to something they might in the past have preferred, but they can still find that meaning or something that's important to them in that context.
Okay, great. I think we probably can turn this over to Q&A. We have a microphone on both ends of the room, so if anybody wants to ask the panel any questions.
While we wait for a question, I'm going to say that also on finding getting the courage to change your life, one of the biggest steps you can make to doing that is really understanding on a granular level what your finances are, so that you know what your nut is, you know where it's coming from, and you know how you can trim it, and then just imagine your life at that level, and if that's what you want and do it, then go. But if you kind of do it without ever really having the grounding of like, how am I going to make this work in my real life, it's not so great probably.
Can I just add to that?
Sure, some final words.
Okay. I just wanted to build on what Ann was saying, though. I think knowing the financial situation, how low you can go, and what your minimal and maximum expenses are is critical. And I like to think that each of us are made of kind of three parts. There's the career and job side of us, there's the family and personal side of us, and there's the financial side of us. If you've got a little bit of time that you can kind of map out where you want to be in each of those things, put it together, then if the economy goes down, or if somebody comes in and gives you a pink slip, at least you've got some vision of where you can take it going from that. I think that's what most of us just don't take the time to make a plan like that.
Yeah. Would you like to add anything, Paul?
I would support that. I think that that's one of our failings as human beings, is that we don't do the planning in advance. You know, we talk about SWOT analysis, and they are easy to do, but few of us do them.
Well, and we've lived such an abundant time in the past few decades. You know, it's like we kind of, you know, our grandparents and so forth lived through. I know most of us have had some kind of experience of being reminded of, you know, well, when the Depression, blah, blah, blah. But we grew up in a time when I remember I just sort of discarded all that. I mean, anything's possible. We can do so much today. I think that contributes to our lack of thinking about, well, how do I develop, why I need to develop this plan. There's somebody at the...
Yeah, I was just wondering, for people who are interested in these issues, what internet resources might people go to that if someone's interested in joining a community or talking to other people or reading sort of, I don't know, the latest on such things?
Well, you know, the obvious answer today is you can either start a group on or find a group on any one of a number of different social networks. Probably the best ones for that are LinkedIn. Today, that's where the action is. That's where people are forming communities. But interestingly enough, as much as happens on the social networks, many times those relationships that are formed result in a real world, face-to-face communication. And there's no substitute for that. That's part of who we are as human beings, is wanting to relate.
Anybody else on the panel want to address that?
I'm a huge advocate in LinkedIn. I think Paul's right on. If you have a career, or you want to have a career, if you're setting up your own business, that's the first place to go. And there's a lot of information online that you can use if you don't know how to set up your own page. It's there. And as soon as you do it, people start reaching out to you like that. It's a big deal.
I would also suggest that the Wall Street Journal actually has a lot of pieces on this subject. So old mainstream media still really digs in deep.
I like the New York Times, and it's rich, and as well as the LA Times. We subscribe to the print edition of the LA Times and the electronic edition of the New York Times.
I just want to say I'm so grateful for this panel. I'm a writer who is a waitress who just became a realtor. And the financial part of this and organizing my life has been so difficult because my husband owns his own business and we've just begun to plan things and organize like you're talking about. And that's the only relief that I've gotten in the last 2 years. And the only way I've felt successful at any of those things was to plan it. And before I just kind of threw myself into it and it all just kind of happened like a dream. But just the fact that you're addressing this, and I've heard of some of your names, but don't know you, and look forward to reading all of your books, because I feel this is exactly where I'm at, and it's just nice to see that you're a little bit older than me, and you've made it through, and you're very successful, and everything's fine, and I feel great to know it, that there's hope to, and also I'm pregnant, so I want to know that all this is going to happen.
Sounds like you're a master of change going on here.
Yeah. Anyways,
But
thanks.
you raised a point that Dennis and I were talking about earlier, which is that I think in the current world that we live in, having multiple kind of, whether you call them tent poles or legs on the stool or whatever you call them that you're involved with, if any one of them gets knocked out, then you have kind of some ability to pull yourself back up again. So if all your eggs are in one basket, it's maybe harder to deal with than if you try and have at least a couple of things going on. So, right on.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Yes.
An ultimate statement of optimism.
What I wanted to ask is this. It seems like there's sort of two messages going on. It's like, well, be clear when you're emotional or something upsets you, be clear. But what I find, and I understand with a lot of women, is that when I'm under stress, it's like I can't even think straight. I don't think logically. And I just wanted to know if you had any kind of solution to that or some ideas about dealing when you're with that.
My thought is when you can't think clearly, and I know it happens to all of us at different times because, as you say, of stress, we really can't, step away. Step away. You know, it's perfectly all right to say that, you know, to say, I'll be back in a minute, or I need to step away for a minute. I mean, nobody needs to know what it's for. And giving yourself that space to, you know, breathe, to get your energy back, your mind back. That's my
Yeah, I would say 99.5% of people, if you say, I need a break for a moment, are going to say fine, or at least not going to say, you can't leave, you can't do it, you can't take care of yourself.
100% agree. The deep breaths, parasympathetic nervous system comes into play right there. It takes you into a different place. Get out, walk around your, you know, neighborhood, your office, whatever you do. Look at different people. Go back in 5 minutes later. You will have had, and simply walking actually, you know, joggles a process that like helps you begin to parse out what it's like freaking you out.
I'd like to add to that. If any of you are supervisors or you have people that you manage, bear in mind what's being said here and give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Even if you've got bad news to tell them you're going to tell them bad news, and let them take a deep breath and understand and process what's about to happen.
Yes, you were talking about working out of, a couple of you said working out of your home. I work out of my home, but I don't work for a corporation. I work for myself. I'm independent. So I basically have to kick my own butt. I have an office at home. I share with actually it's not my husband's office because he has an office at work. He just has a desk there. I feel like I kind of lose control, and what I mean by that is I get up every day, but I don't feel I'm super productive. I make some money, and I think this is subconscious because it's not conscious because I believe in to keep on working, even if I can pay my bills. And there's something that happens to me. I get distracted. I get distracted by not so much my cats, but I don't apparently plan well. In the last minute, I try and prepare dinner, even though I have it planned. I know what the menu is. I get distracted by things that go around in my head. I may have attention deficit. I don't know. But I'm just wondering if you had some kind of advice you could give to someone like me, because I have so much opportunity and I'm not going for it, and it really, really bothers me.
Well, this is something that is a devil that I have to deal with. Because we're called upon, even when we work at home, to multitask. You know, there's instant messaging, there's Skype messaging, there's email coming in, and there's what you really want to do. And the best antidote that I have found for that is to take the time. I do it at the end of the day rather than at the beginning of the day, but is to plan everything out as much and anticipate as much as I can. And I find that out of that order, that priority list, that to-do list, writing things down, that I can deal with the sanity. Then there's some other little tools that that Ann mentioned. The breathing is to take a deep breath. It really does make a difference. it really does make a difference because it allows us to think that we have a priority list, that we do have something to do.
What really helped me was that I had to think about what kind of boss I wanted to be. I was so eager to get away from the bosses I had that then I became my own boss. And we've seen this with so many of the people that we've counseled with and spoken to. I had a good friend of ours, when she went home, she found that because things were integrated, she'd start reading the paper, and then she'd put on the dishes, and then she'd do this, and it would be like 11 o'clock. And it was like, wow, I haven't gotten it. She felt like she was working because she was doing things. And so I found it helpful to start thinking about, okay, I don't want to be a really mean ogre boss, which I've had before, but I also can't be like no boss. Right. You know, I can't just go, oh, well, whatever today. Because as you say, then you end up losing out on opportunities and you lose out on your goals that you have. So it's kind of like, okay, let's switch into our boss mode now. Get your little self in gear here, girl. You know, you have, like self-talk.
Well, make office hours. I'm at my desk by 9 o'clock. I don't leave it till 1 o'clock. I mean, you know, you have to actually treat your day as if you are a professional, I think.
Yeah.
I'll add one thing to it. It's easy when we're at home to believe we've accomplished a lot of things, but then look back and go, we didn't get the big stuff done. Ask yourself when you're working on things, is this important or is this urgent? Because there's lots of little things that are always nipping at us that we think we've got to get that done, but then at the end of the day, we didn't do the important things.
And maybe a play date with the cat. Oh, did you have a question?
I'm just wondering if you could offer some ideas for someone looking for fulfillment in their work. I think you guys touched on a lot of logistical type of questions, but I'm in the middle of a career change, and I'm just trying to find that career that would be fulfilling for me. And I've read a few books on the subject and going to networking events, but I just thought maybe the panel would have other ideas too, and just how to find that fulfilling job.
I'll jump in on that. I think the first thing you want to do is define your purpose. And I know that's an overused word right now, but I think when we take a look at really what turns us on, what we most care about, it helps clarify where we want to go. And by doing that, you're following kind of a time-honored tradition that's done by corporations. When we set up DirecTV, the first thing we did was we decided what it was that we wanted to be. The same thing works for people. And then we decided how we could go about doing that. How would I get into a new job? How would I go about starting my own business? Knowing what it is that turns us on really becomes motivational. Then from that, when you've decided what your purpose is, do the SWOT analysis that we talked about just now. Take a look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats, and then consider the opportunities that are out there. It may take you a while to get there. You may have to have some step-by-step to change jobs or careers. But if you start with knowing what it is that you really care about, the likelihood is you'll end up doing something that you care most about, and you'll be very successful.
Yeah, in our book, Finding Your Perfect Work, we have something that we call the matrix, where you're trying to get your compelling desires together with the things that you were mentioning, your compelling desires. What is it that is attractive to you? I like to call that green. You know, would you like to go toward? But combining that then with looking at, well, what are your resources? What are your talents? What are you bringing? Might there need to be something that you'd like to add to that if you want to go towards where you're going? And then really looking around the opportunities in your community. You know, what is needed? And how can I bring what interests me together with what I bring, what I can contribute, and with the opportunities that are out there? And when you get that, when you get the three crossing over, then you've really got a bullseye for yourself. Finding Your Perfect Work.
Yeah,
the authors will be signing their books actually in Area 2 afterwards. So.
The one little thing I'd also say is get specific. I can't tell you the number of people who come to me and say, wow, I really want a job in entertainment. And I'm like, you know, because it's like, do you like children's entertainment? Are you interested in being an illustrator? Do you like, you know, adult? Do you like food? Do you like travel? Go into something with a little specificity, and then you can begin to decide like what are the elements within it. But you don't go into like big like entertainment. You'll never get there.
I completely agree with that. And sometimes people have difficulty, though, refining what it is they like. Do they like entertainment or travel? Again, this is a problem that we've worked on, and let me offer you a free resource. Sarah talked about green, and there's a very simple instant test that you can use, and it's available. We put it up free on a website called justaskatree.com. And when you're going through the process of deciding whether you would like this or that, whether you'd prefer to be, and I don't want to waste time with developing specific examples, try that out, justaskatree.com. There's no charge for it, there's no commercial on it, it's just there.
Did you have a question?
You were talking about when you're planning your life out, it's really important. But I think there's also some value in having the mindset that there's a possibility to do anything in your world, like anything is possible. And as a young person, I'm always looking for advice, when I choose my career, like how to keep a balance of being happy and doing what I want to do, but also being successful in my life. So do you have any advice for that?
How do you define success? I don't mean to do it right now, but I mean that's the crux of it.
Yeah.
I think that kind of gets back to that issue of, what's possible, of, looking at the actual opportunities. The idea, we have sort of labored under this concept for the past few decades that anything was possible. If you can dream it, you can be it. There's so many sayings like that. And in a sense, it was like that in the 80s and in the 90s for so many people. But in the realities of today, like you're saying, we have to look at what's possible as well. That not everything is possible for every person at a specific time. So I like very much that you're wanting to put the two together, and that's the challenge: is how do we bring what is interesting to us, what we enjoy, together with what's needed, with what's available. And I think that idea of need is really important. Where the opportunities relate to need. What is it that our society is needing right now? Where they need your contributions. They need what you have to bring.
After graduating high school, what courses do you suggest I take to be a freelance photographer?
Oh, wow. You're in the technical field.
Well, I live in New York City, so there's the International Center for Photography. I assume that there's equivalent institutions in Los Angeles, and I would go online and find organizations like that you could do it. Or if you're already in a college, go to the art department and take courses.
Oh, and another terrific resource. You can take virtually so many courses, almost anything today, often for free from colleges, by going to their websites and looking for the courses. And I would say I would supplement what you take in college. If you can get into an apprenticeship program, like I know a man who I work with who has an animation company. And he's he works with the local high school, and he's helping a group of high school students experience that. And so if your school offers that, and if it doesn't offer that, I'd ask for them to, because a lot of times there are people that are wanting to have that experience. And sometimes it works for them commercially.
It's called a mentor program that some of the high schools have. Ours has. We do not have an advanced high school in our community, but they do have that program. It's called Academy, and they have mentors. I'm also thinking that you're in high school, right? So I'm thinking that I know that photography is your interest, but you want to be a freelance photographer, then you need to know math, and you need to know marketing, and you need to know communication skills, so that which that means being able to write well enough. You don't have to be a writer, but so that you can articulate yourself in terms of public relations, so that you can express what your unique talents are, your unique specialties in the area of photography, and so that you can manage the business aspects of being sure that you're making enough money, that you're charging the right prices. Really kind of practical things, together with gaining those skills to do well at photography, and just take lots of pictures and work at it, until you get it the way you want it.
You raise a great point. Being a freelancer is being in sales 24/7, actually.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, I'm a student at Immaculate Heart High School. I'm a student from Immaculate Heart High School, and as a student, there's many distractions socially. So I was wondering, what your take is on balancing that in your work life.
Well, I think that there's a ongoing question for adults as well as high schoolers about how to balance that. And sometimes it involves trade-offs. Sometimes it involves saying not now. And that's all the question we were talking about, boundaries, of saying that this much time I'm going to spend with my family, and this is how I'm going to do that. Sarah, you probably have something.
Yeah, as someone who's in high school, having an enjoyable social life is kind of the key to where you are right now. It's very important. And so to enjoy that and still keep your eye on the ball in terms of, and in school, one of the nice things about school is there always is a ball to keep your eye on. You always know what your classes are, and you always know what or hopefully you know where you're doing, whether you're getting good grades, average grades, poor grades, and those things can kind of be your guide in terms of, oops, I think I'm slipping a bit too far here because I haven't prepared. But keeping your eye on the ball, at the same time enjoying yourself, because this is a time for you to do that.
Actually, I'd like to add something from John's book, which I thought was very apt in this particular case, and that's to write out what your goals are, so that you can see them in front of you, because it really makes a difference when you actually see them as opposed to when they're rattling around in your head. So if you can set your goals and then just, make sure, just try to achieve them, try to achieve as many as you can, that way to prioritize, your work and, your recreational life. So, if you achieve certain goals quickly, obviously that buys you a little time to kind of spend, so a little bit of credit.
And you can also maybe combine them. Like if you're into theater, then, the after-school activity is actually something that is also kind of academically connected and your social scene is connected, or sports or whatever it might be. But, maybe you can interrelate them in a way too.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming to the panel today. And the authors will actually be signing their books, copies of their books, which will also be for sale in Area 2.
Not like Area 49 or 41 or whatever it is, 51.
51, yeah.
51.
And hopefully...